Back, play it forward. Welcome so much, Hazel McKibbin. I
Thank you
like
so much for having me.
I like your last name. It's fun to say.
Thanks.
Do you ever just like go McKibbin, McKibbin? No,
Not generally.
no. Okay, because you're kind of over it.
I mean, I've had it for a while, I guess.
Would you like to introduce yourself or your work in any way before we start?
Sure. I'm Hazel McKibbin. I'm a writer and director. And yeah, that's what I do.
That's perfect. You are a writer, director, filmmaker, artist, and the work we'll be talking today is about is She Always Wins. And
Yes.
it's a really thoughtful, strong piece. And I really enjoyed it. And um, Play It Forward always asks the same three questions. I think it's good for the audience maybe to set up the storyline briefly. Would you like me to take a stab or do you feel strong in it?
I'd be curious to hear what your interpretation of it is.
Sure. So just because there's, layers. So the surface storyline, it's really interesting. And I think I really enjoyed it, especially in reflection, because the first view and just quick, it's like, well, what's that film about? And then as you process it, there's really a lot going on. And I think if you're not paying attention, it's easy to miss because it's so inherent in our lives. And, the storyline for me is just a very kind of, it begins in a scene with, upper middle class English countryside setting. And there's two English young women and their sisters. And one is a nice foil to the other, and she's kind of the soothsayer and there's a young American man and their girlfriend boyfriend, she's introducing him to her parents for the first time. They're sort of chilling out in their country villa prior to them coming home. And backgammon, they just, the parents love backgammon, so they're getting this American kid prepped on how to play backgammon, and he's never done so before. And in the process, there's a lot of dynamics that are revealed and flying around. And to me, you know, there's a lot about the surface and the appearance, and the water is a nice metaphor in that, with going above and beneath the water. Really pretty metaphor there. And so that's kind of what I mean. There's like so much going on about how people want to appear in their lives and how they want to be seen in their lives, and how there's competition involved in that, and especially that's just ubiquitous in our cultures, material consumer cultures, and so much so in New York City. You're in New York City, I'm in New York City. Oh my God. The first two questions people ask you is, hey, what do you do, where do you live, right? So
Yeah, totally.
that's the deal. So how do they do?
Great. Yeah, I think there are lots of layers to the film. There's like an element of class, there's power, and there's a bit of an age difference, and generally the backgammon sort of reveals and tracks how those dynamics shift through the course of the game, I guess, is what I hope. And I do think it's like you see one thing when you watch it once, and hopefully people like it and want to watch it again. And there are lots of different elements to it, which is why I built it like that.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it's very tense. I'm like waiting for like the stalker to jump out of the woods and rip everybody's heads off. And it's wonderful because, in our bodies, when we play that game in appearance and try to use each other in our own kind of, very complicated and very tense. And there's also, in addition to the class and power dynamic, there's this sex war of the sexes kind of thing going on.
Totally.
So the very first question to play it forward is, where in your body, in your experience, in your mind, in your psyche, soul, um did that germinal seed for this story come and blossom?
Yeah. Well, it's like I feel many people, the way in which many artists work is based on experiences that I've had and my life, and really, hopefully, the overall feeling for the film is like making yourself small because someone else needs to feel big, and that was the original kernel, I guess, of the idea of building the whole film around that. And there are many different ways in which that happened, but yeah, that's like the essence, I guess, of the project.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it, because I know, we've all done it. I mean, I've done it,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, ad nauseum. I mean, it's like you're in, like with my wife's parents, there was a period of many, many, many years where, it's just like, yeah, you guys are, you're the bosses. I'm going to play by your rules and, smile. Because I want everything to be cool. Like everything should be cool and loved and all that. And I guess, as personal as you want to be,
Yeah.
where did you feel that most in your, life?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the relationship that the film is based on, I was with someone for many years who is almost 20 years older than me.
Oh
And
God.
when we, yeah, so when we met, I was young. I was 21. And as I got older and more sure of myself, the relationship worked less and less, because I was like, becoming, I had my own, I was less deferent maybe. And so sort of the film, She Always Wins, imagines it's it's not strictly what happened, but it sort of is like a all the red flags I maybe ignored the very early part of that relationship, that then of course like those dynamics, um for me, like the relationship didn't end when the film maybe suggests that it might have, but I think it's a little open to interpretation. And now years later, reflecting back on that period of my life, and the things I learned, I kind of wanted to like give a voice to. I always feel like it's there's something that I say better with film than I could ever like explain, with words. So that's where all of my work kind of comes from, is that I hope to like illuminate something that I'm not eloquent enough to say.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I um I guess before jumping into the second question, which I'll pose and then kind of say something briefly and get back to it. Well, maybe I should wait. Maybe I'll just pose a question. Um, I really like to ask and understand from the artist, because it's such like a cool, unique thing to have the artist talk about their work in terms of sharing how do they see it now themselves watching the movie. What is the message and meaning of the movie as you see it?
Um, I don't know that it has a clear message, and I think that's sort of the point. It's different people will view it in different ways, and it's funny. Like you put a project out into the world, I have the way that I see it, but then other people start to talk about it, and it sort of takes on a life of its own. Some of what I intended, and some of it's just you bring your own experiences to how you read a film. And I think with She Always Wins, it's less like explaining something and more hopefully illuminating some of the ways in which power shifts in relationships and kind of tracking that, because I'd like it to be more of a reflective experience than like explaining. Hopefully you can watch it and take what, as you said, so many of us have had similar experiences of making yourself small for someone else, and I think that's like universal and hopefully allows for reflection on those experiences.
Certainly. I'm gonna kind of challenge a little bit, and offer, as storytellers, there's a narrative structure, and it's inherent, it's built into the beginning, middle, end, and it's they're presented for interpretation to be read. So and I understand kind of wanting to, not because I've gotten a streak of artists all of a sudden, and everybody's like, no, I want to leave the message for the audience to decide. And of course, you don't say, well, I was trying to say, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But the reason I try to pose it as like, how do you see it as a viewer? How do you experience the story? What is the message of the movie for you now? What is that? cathartic thing because the way you've built it is there's tension, right? It's not like a warm fuzzy feel good atmosphere.
Yeah.
And assuming like I don't want to be in that tense like constricted environment. I want to be in a hey, I want to be in a like a nice place. Then there's something that movie is telling me that says, hey, this is not such a nice place, and maybe you can go this way. And
Yeah.
so I can offer some stuff if unless I've
Well,
inspired something in
I
you.
mean, I can say it's, to me, like the message is that that's not it's not sustainable. That kind of dynamic and that kind of relationship. And um, although I would love to say that in my personal life I saw those red flags and avoided them, I did not. And I think that's the part of ambivalence about the end of the film, in which in my life I didn't leave that a relationship like that, but I think it suggests that she might, because it's not sustainable, and it ultimately wasn't for me. And I don't think for you can only like fake it for so long, I guess, and keep that mask of pretending, and not owning yourself. So if there were a message, I think I mean, it's so individual, but that would be, um, as you're saying, from the tension, and it's not comfortable, and it shouldn't be because it's never comfortable in, reality.
Yeah, and I think that's the way I read it, understand it now. That imbalance of equality, especially among partners, right? That's hello, you know, in any relationship is not a sustainable model. It's
Yeah.
bound to break down. And, one thing that, because I read it in that way, especially now, but I read it even more about appearances and sort of kind of where's the culpability? What game is each individual playing? And if to me, each individual is playing a game, and where does the
Yeah.
culpability lie? Because, the protagonist, the young woman, she also wants something out
Yeah.
of this relationship. And so she's engaging in her own, allowing him to win, right? In
Yeah.
backgammon and other things in order to, you know,
Yeah.
something.
Keep the peace. Yeah, something. And the way that it was built was very much as a triangle dynamic. Like they each want different things from each other and different things from their relationships, and they're never on the same page until the very end of the film. Um, and once everything is like laid out in the open, and each character understands the ways in which they're all moving, then only then is it balanced, and it's still not like a happy balance, but at least all three sides of the triangle are like holding up, in whatever kind of weird dynamic they have going on.
Mm, mm. The last question, play forward. Um, since making this film, how have you changed as a person?
Um, well, I made it a long time. They take so long to make. So we finished it on set. We shot in North Wales last like 2 summers ago. So I feel at one place then, and then it had its festival premiere, and that's another view of it finishing, and then it's still doing stuff. So each of those periods has marked like a shift in my life, but also, in the way that I view the film, and like getting closer and further away from what it means to me, but also how I see it taking on a life of its own. I guess I don't know. I find each of this is my second short. Each of them has been like a cathartic experience in a way of like releasing something that is so internal. I mostly make work that's very internal, and about my experiences. So to have them out in the world and sort of like no longer kept so close is always like a relief, and also like you're so proud of the work and that it even was finished in the first place, because they're always so hard to make. So I don't know that I could say exactly how I've changed, but I definitely do feel different having made it. Yeah.
Perhaps more liberated, it sounds like.
Yeah, and maybe also more confident in my work, both as like a director, given that this is my second film. The first one is like always feels like it's such a one-off. So I feel more confident in my work, but also yeah, definitely liberated of some of those experiences, although of course there's always more.
For sure, for sure. We'll always keep growing.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
Hazel McKibbin, it's a great film, very strong.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Hazel McKibbin, she always wins, nominated by Emma Hall Martin. All right, till next time, everybody.